Today's Daf Shabbos Cholamoid is Daf Kuf Tez Zayin. So Kum learn about Gemara. We'll learn Kuf Tez Zayin. I'm also going to do Kuf Yud Zayin if anybody wants to stay on. So let's begin. Kuf Tez Zayin Amud Aleph. We're up to 7 lines on the top of the page. Amud Rabbi Yochanan. Amud Rabbi Yochanan. So working our way through the different rules of inheritance. And the last Mishnah that we learned was the hierarchy or the order of who gets first and who gets second, son, then the daughter, then the father, and then you work your way down the brothers of the deceased, and then if not, you go up and then down, up and down, so on. Okay. Says the Gemara, we're going to digress over here. Amr Rabbi Yochanan. This is actually a very difficult Gemara to understand. Amr Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Mishum Rab Shimon ben Yochai, in the name of Rab Shimon ben Yochai. Kol she'eino maniach ben liyorshay. You don't have a son. If you don't leave behind a son to inherit you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu molei olav evra. Hashem is upset with you. Actually, evra means angry with you. And the Rashbam goes further and he says that he hates you. So the Rameh and the Rashbam negation goes even further and he says you called her Russia. The Rameh says we're talking about a case here where you just didn't want to have children. You didn't want to leave any heirs behind. But there's a problem with that pshat, as we'll soon see. Okay, so the Gemara continues. How do I know that? It says here, it says over here that when you pass on the inheritance, if there was no son, you take it away from the father, you give it to the daughter. And it says there, that day Hashem is angry. So we see that Hashem is angry if you don't leave any sons behind. We bring another pasuk. You have no one to swap yourself with. You have no one to replace you. It means you're not a God-fearing person. Now, who are we referring to? Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. We have a dispute between Rabbi Yochanan and Yeshua ben Levi. One of them says, Kol she'enoi maniach ben. If you don't leave a son behind, if you don't have a son, Hashem says you're not a God-fearing person. We are one line above the wide line. Chadam, and the other one says, if you don't have any students, no, they don't teach anyone that can, assume your place, Hashem is angry and upset with you. To Stayim, we will conclude that Rabbi Yochanan is the one who says, we have an argument here. Are we talking about you don't have a son? Or we're talking about that you didn't bother teaching anybody and contributing to society, and you don't have a Talmud to replace you. Rabbi Yochanan says we are talking about a Talmud. We're in Kuf Tez Zayin, the first wide line. And we basically learned Rabbi Yochanan said that if you don't have leave a son behind, Hashem is angry with you. And someone said that if you don't leave a student. We're trying to work out who said student and who said you don't have any students that you taught, or it says a son. So Gemara says, I would conclude Rabbi Yochanan is the one who says we're not talking about a son. If you don't have any sons, so be it. We're talking about you didn't contribute, you didn't teach anyone. Because Rabbi Yochanan said, we had this Gemara Brachas, which was very sad. Rabbi Yochanan had 10 sons, and he lost them all. And he made himself a necklace, and he carried a part of his son around his necklace, and he would go console anyone who unfortunately lost a child. He would console them and say, look, I lost 10 children. I still moved on. You should move on, and and so on. And as Gemara said, Dain Garmei, this particular bone, the Asiroya Bir, my 10th child. What that bone was is a big argument. Rashi in Bracha says he had a little tiny bone, smaller than the size of a barley, and here the Rashbam says he had a tooth. Because a tooth does not have to be buried, even if the tooth was inside the mace. You don't have to bury it because the child or the person wasn't born with teeth. So a tooth, hair, nails, they don't have to be buried. Rashi there says a bone the size less than a barley. So there's a big machlekes in Rishonim. What is the din? What do you actually have to bury? According to some, any part of the body that generates tumah has to be buried. Hence, Rashi says, if it's, and we know the minimum size of a bone that generates tumah is the size of a barley. So Rashi therefore says a bone less than the size of a barley, since it does not generate tumah, it doesn't have to be buried. So according to Rashi, the criteria is when something that is generates tumah has to be buried. If it doesn't have to be buried. Rashi doesn't say a tooth, because maybe Rashi holds that even though a tooth does not generate tumah, it's a sizable piece and it's not nice. It's like a bazillion of the mace that it shouldn't be buried with a mace. The Rashbam seems to say that a tooth also does not generate tumah, does not have to be buried. There are others who say that there's no connection between what has to be buried and tumah, and even the minutest part of a person has to be buried. A tooth is different because it's not part of the person. In other words, the Rashbam would hold that a bone, even smaller than the size of a barley, would have to be buried. Doesn't matter, it doesn't generate tumah, but it's part of the person. It's not appropriate that it shouldn't be buried. A tooth, on the other hand, is not really an integral part of the person. It came into this person later on. And there's another view, the Neiv Yehuda, that says that any parts of a person does not have to be buried, even though some say, limbs have to be buried, doesn't be buried unless it's the majority of the person. Now, since Rabbi Yochanan walked around and told everybody that he had no sons, if Hashem is very angry with somebody that has no sons, why is he advertising it? So it must be Rabbi Yochanan personally held that it doesn't matter if you don't have any sons. Hashem is only angry with you that if you never taught anything to anyone else, you don't have any students at all throughout your whole lifetime. So at this time, I can conclude Rabbi Yochanan is the one who said, Talmid, that Hashem is only angry with you if you don't have any Talmidim. And with Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Talmid, if Rabbi Yochanan says a student, then must be Rabbi Shmuel Levi, Amar Ben. Rabbi Shmuel Levi is the one who says that if you have no sons, Hashem is angry with you. But we see from here, not like the Rameh. Rameh said this is talking about where a person decided not to have any children. But in other words, if he tried and didn't have, Hashem has no recriminations. However, the story of Rabbi Yochanan, it's not his fault. He had 10 sons and they all predeceased him. They all died. Why would Hashem be angry with him? Seems from here that from whatever it is, which is hard to understand, difficult to understand, even though you tried and you had children, they all died. The fact is, you have no children left, no heirs to assume your position, your place. Hashem is upset with you. Why exactly? There's no explanation. Says the Gemara further. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. The Gemara asks a question. So you're telling me Shua ben Levi said that Hashem is angry with someone that has no son. Rabbi Shmuel Levi, he would never go to anybody's house of mourning to console them. He wouldn't do Nicham Avelu. Why? Because he wanted to learn Torah and he felt that he was taking up time of learning. But when did he go? When it was a big Rachmanis. When was that? If somebody died, without any sons. Because the Chsibit says, you should only cry with somebody who's going. What do you mean, somebody who should have had somebody to replace them, and they don't have anybody to replace him. So therefore, he had such a Rahmanas, he went and he helped them out. Now, if Hashem was angry with that person, why would we feel that it's worthy for me to take off time from learning to help that person out, console him, when he didn't console anybody else? So obviously, Rabbi Shmuel Levi held that only a student, if you have no students, and that's a choice of yours, you don't want to teach anyone, and you have so much knowledge, Hashem is angry. But when it comes to a son, Hashem is not. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav, only went to mourn houses of people who didn't have any sons. So I must conclude, Rabbi Shua Levi says it's talking about a student. That Hashem is only upset with you have no students. So if Rabbi Shua Levi Talmid, Rabbi Shua Levi is the one who says that Hashem is only upset with you if you have no students, then Rabbi Yochanan must be the one who said Ben, that if you have no sons, which is difficult. Rabbi Yochanan said Hashem is angry if someone has no sons, and he went from house to house demonstrating and proclaiming to everyone that I have no sons. Why would he do that? We have a contradiction of Rabbi Yochanan. Says the Gemara, like Kasha, it's not a problem. This is himself, and this is the teacher. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan personally agreed with Rabbi Shimon Levi. If somebody doesn't have any sons, Hashem does not get angry, then it's not their fault. If it's not their fault. But when Hashem is upset is, you should have had students and you don't have any. But what Rabbi Yochanan said before about somebody not having sons was actually something he said in the name of his teacher, in the name of Shimon Yochai. But personally, he didn't agree with it. Says the Gemara further, talking about children, it says, Hadad Shama. It said that Hadad heard the Mitzrayim. He heard the Mitzrayim. Ki shochav David im avaysav. Shochav literally means went to sleep. David passed away, and he joined his ancestors. And b'chimeis Yoav sar hatzava. And Yoav, the general, the head of the army, the commander in chief, he died. Now the question is, why, when it comes to Yoav, it used the word died, and when it comes to David, it used the word shachav, that he lied down, even though both of them have passed away. Why we use the word shchiva? The Yoav never by Misa. By Yoav it says Misa. He died. Says the Gemara. David sheniach ben. David who left behind a son. Who never by shchiva. It's as if he only went to sleep because David continued on through his son. Yoav shelo ben Yoav who did not leave behind a son. Nemra by Misa. As if his life came to an end, was curtailed. Says the Gemara. It's not true. The Yoav lo yeniach ben. What Yoav didn't have any sons. Look, see, it says clearly mibnei Yoav. The children of Yoav, sons of Yoav, Avadia ben Yechiel, he had the son Yechiel. Ella, Sigmara says, David, Sheiniach ben Kamoisen, David not only left behind a son, but the son was equal to him, Shlomo Melech. So therefore it's as if he went to lie down because David is continuing to live through his son. Yoav, Sheiniach ben Kamoisen, Yoav, we've seen in Morris and Hedron, Yoav was a big tzaddik, did not leave a son behind equal to him. Nemra there it says Misa, as if his life came to an end. Talking from Rabban Pinchas ben Chama, he continues. That is totally unrelated, but it's the same Rabban Pinchas ben Chama. We don't have too many thoughts of his, so we brought them together. Kasha aniyas, that all kinds of sufferings, health and other things, but poverty is the worst. Kosha aniyas b'toich beisa shalodam, having poverty at home is worse than yosem echamishem makas, worse than 50 different ailments. How do I know that? Shenemar, because Eov was complaining about all the different problems that he had. Chanuni, he says, beg for me, Atem Reya, you're my friends. Ki yad Elokai nogibi, the hand of Hashem struck me. We know that Hashem used the finger to make the 10 makas in Mitzrayim. A hand has 5 fingers, so this is a multiple of 5. 50 different makas he had, and he's complaining. What does friend say to him? Hishama, be careful. I'll take for the love and don't complain too much about all the tragedies. You'd rather have these 50 different ailments rather than poverty. Even though Eov lost his cattle, he didn't lose his income, he didn't lose his property, he was still a wealthy person. And therefore, no matter how many cars you have, at least you can afford to pay for doctors and everything else. If you poverty is the worst thing. Now this is very interesting. Rab Pinchas bar Chama said, you know that people who had problems, they go to a Rebbe. Everyone needs to go to a Bava Basra Rebbe to ask for a bracha, for health, for other issues, parnasa, whatever it is. Where does that concept come from? That you go to a big tzaddik to ask for bracha. It actually comes from this Gemara right here. It says, Darash Rab Pinchas bar Chama, Kol sheyesh lo choyle b'torch beis, somebody in your family that's sick. Apart from going to a doctor, Yelech Eitzel Chacham, go to a Chacham, and some Rishonim add the word Be'ila in your city, but our Gemara says to the Chacham, the Yevakesh Olav Rachmim, and that Chacham will daven for you. Shenemar, it says, Hamas Melech, it says there, that like the anger of Hashem, somebody is sick, is Malachim Mavis, these Malachim of Mavis, but the Ish Chacham, Yikaprena. But a person if you go to the Chacham, to the Tzaddik, Yechaprena, he will atone for it or he'll clean it away. So it says here clearly that if somebody has a problem, you go to a Tzaddik. And what's interesting is the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch, I think Siman Shin Lamed Hey, the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch actually brings this halacha down. Interesting, the Gemara here doesn't, when they bring out all the poskim, where you find the Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't bring it here. Interesting, it doesn't note it, but it's in Shulchan Aruch, in Hilchos Chayil. Shimon Lamed Hey, in the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch brings it clearly as a halacha. If you have somebody sick in your house, you should go to a tzaddik, and they should daven. And that's what we paskin. But interesting, and that's where it comes from, the idea of going to a rebbe for a bracha. But interesting, the Meiri changes the Gemara. The Meiri writes that if somebody's sick in your family, go to the tzaddik of the city, and he will show you how to daven. He changes, not that the tzaddik will daven on your behalf and give you a bracha, rather he will show you how you should daven. and you should be davening. Interesting twist. Okay, we're continuing to learn the laws of inheritance. So we're quoting the Mishnah. The Mishnah laid a rule. Zakla. This is the rule. Call hakoidim benachla. Whoever is first in line, earlier in line to inherit, his descendants have first right. Right. So in other words, let's say the son of the deceased is first, and if he also passed away, then his children, his son, his grandson, if not then the daughter, and so on. So that's how you work. And then if there's nothing, then you look at the sister, and then you go work your way down. If there's nothing, then you go to the father of the deceased, and then you work your way down, which is the brothers of the deceased. And each brother, if they don't have, you look at their children. Does they have children? So you go to a person, then you work all your way down. But a father comes before all his descendants. Now, so the question is, the way we understood it is the deceased, the first person who inherits from the deceased are his children, his sons or descendants, not the sons, and the daughter and descendants. And the father comes the next, and then the brothers of the deceased, or the sister of the deceased. but the Mishnah says, says the Gemara, Ramacham asked the question. Avi ha'ov, let's say the grandfather. So you have the person, the first person, the deceased, no children or anything else, and so you go like this. You go to the and the father passed away. So you have, let's say, a person who died, the father passed away, and now there's a grandfather alive, and there's a brother of the deceased alive. Who gets priority? Who gets priority? The grandfather? No, because what we said was if the person deceased has no children, we go up to the father. Okay, now we went to the father. There's no father. Does he go one more step up? Or before we go up, first we go down to the siblings of the deceased. So Aviav, the grandfather, and Vachayav, or the brothers of the person who died. So here we'll give an example. Avram v'Yishmael, v'Nische Esav. So you have Esav passed away. We're not talking about Yaakov. We're talking about Esav passed away. Esav had no children. So what happens then is it goes up to Yitzchak. It goes to Yitzchak. Let's say Yitzchak didn't have any other children besides Esav. So what happens now? Does Yitzchak go up to Avram, or does Yitzchak now go sideways to Yishmael? Who gets priority? Ezim and Kain, who gets first? Amar Rava said, I don't understand the question. The Mishnah clearly said that first you go up before you go to their descendants. So first you go to Avram, because remember, Yishmael is a descendant of Avram. So obviously you go first to Avram. What's his question? Says you're right. Rami bar Chama, and Rami bar Chama is Agav, famous expression in the Gemara. Agav Churfe, because of his sharpness, la'ayin, but he didn't look properly into the subject. The Rashbam actually says because he already was thinking about another matter altogether that he didn't concentrate on this one. Or the Rabbeinu Gesher says because he was just revising his learning, he was not really learning, the iyun in depth. He was just, glossing over it. So therefore, this question came up. But so the Gemara says, now what was the second question that he was thinking? The second question is a more serious question. This is my question. Avi ha'av, the grandfather Avram, but not Yishmael. Of course, Avram comes before Yishmael. Yishmael only gets the Yerusha because he's the son of Avram. So of course, Avram comes first. And we're talking about Avram versus Yaakov. Yitzchak, okay. So Esav died, he has no children. And then what happens is, before the brother Yashins, it goes to Yitzchak, the father. Yitzchak passed away, or Yitzchak died. So who's next in line? Do we say it's Avram, or do we say it's Yaakov? Now, it should be Yaakov. What's the question? We know that if Yitzchak is not around, it goes to Yotzei Yerecha. It goes down to Yaakov, which is the brother of Esav. What's the question? The question is, we have a rule, and we'll learn the Gemara in a few pages. B'nei bonim harei hein kebonim. The grandchildren are just like children. So maybe in this case, if Yitzchak is not, Yitzchak is not around, and Esav passed away, it's as if Esav now becomes the son of Avram. So Avram is not going to yarshin Esav because via Yitzchak. If Avram yarshins Esav because Yitzchak the father yarshins, and then Avram takes from Yitzchak, then there's no question. Then Yaakov gets first. But if Bnei Boni Marhein Kiboni maybe means literally, if Yitzchak is not there, Esav is considered Avram's son. So in that case, Avram is the father, and Avram should get before Yaakov. That's the question. Avram be Yaakov and Esav. Who gets first? That's how Rashbam learns the question. Amar Rav says, Rav Toshma. It says, Ha'av koidem l'chol yaitzi reicha. Rav actually learned that Avram gets first. So the way Rashbam learns, the reason why Avram gets first is only in this case here because a grandfather takes the place of the father, or the grandson becomes the son. If there's no father in between, the grandson becomes the son. So Avram now is the father, and that's why he gets it. That's how, what do you call it? That's how the Rashbam and other Rishonim learn. Taisa learns a little bit differently. Taisa seems to learn that that Avram takes from Yitzchak. Yitzchak first goes to his father before he goes sideways. And Taisa says, according to Rabbi, it would seem, as odd as it is, that he holds that a son does not yashin before the father. That Bichlal, we always learn that the son is the first heir. Rabbi, for some reason or other, understood that the father is the first heir, because the Mishnah says the rule is that the father gets first. He takes it literally, which then would mean that which we accuse Rabbi Bacham of Agav Churfe La'ayimbo, you can accuse a Rabbi of the same thing. Anyway, so that's what Rabbi said. Come to the Gemara and says, we feel that Rabbi Bacham, even though he remained with a question, his question is a valid question, and we're not going to rule like Rabbi. But Rabbi Bacham learns the pshat in the Mishnah that when we say Yaitse Yerechai, we only mean your own Yaitse Yerechai, not your son's Yaitse Yerechai. And therefore, when if Yitzchak has passed away, it doesn't go up to Avram. First, the Yaitse Yerecha of Yitzchak we take care of, and that is Yaakov. Yaakov, the brother of Esav, inherits first. And Hachanam, that makes sense. Anybody is first in line. His descendants are first. So if Yitzchak would have been around, who would get first? And Yitzchak would have inherited. Yitzchak Kaidim. And now that he's not around, his Yerecha should be next in line. And who is the descendants of Yitzchak? Not his father Avram. That is his what's the word? That is his anyway, that's his father. They have to go down to his descendant. And therefore, Yaakov gets first. Hashnam, let's say Yaakov Kaidim. Shmam is a good proof. Now the next few pages in the Gemara, we're going to deal with the daughters of Slavchad. They were all Noshim Tzidkaniyas. They were also brilliant women, and the Torah should spend so much time with them, and they brought out all of these laws. Obviously, it's very important. So we have to halkop. Rashi Chumash looks a little bit differently. We have to halkop, see what's going on over there, but how it works exactly. How did they divide Eretz Yisrael, and how who received portions in Eretz Yisrael? Because this is what happened. You had the people who left Mitzrayim, and in Mitzrayim they were told that they were going to inherit Eretz Yisrael. But nobody who left Mitzrayim made it to Eretz Yisrael. They all died. If they were over 20 when they left Mitzrayim, they all died in the 40 years in the desert. None of them made it. So, and then it says that in the end of Parashat Pinchas, it says that when you went to Yisrael, le'ela techolakara, to these people the land would be divided. That is, the people entering Eretz Yisrael, totally different generation. So how did they divide the land? According to the people who entered Eretz Yisrael, le'ela techolakara, or is it according to the people who left Mitzrayim? And we're going to have three opinions how it works. And it's very odd. It's different than a normal kind of inheritance. So the first opinion is going to be that it's the people who left Mitzrayim. They inherited Eretz Yisrael. And then they passed it on as like any other Yerusha to their children and grandchildren, like any other Yerusha. So therefore, if you have, let's say, two brothers who left it, and one brother had 10 sons and one brother had 5 sons, and they left Mitzrayim, and then when it comes, so they get whatever portions it is. when they come then to Eretz Yisrael, let's say most of them died out, and the one who had 10 sons now, let's say, only has one left, and the one who has and the other one has 10 sons going to Mitzrayim. We'll make it easier. Two brothers. One guy, they both two brothers, but that was when they left Mitzrayim. But over the years, one of them had 10 grandchildren, and the other one had two grandchildren, or one grandchild. When they came into Yisrael, the one grandchild received the same amount of property as the one that has 10 children, because it doesn't depend on those who entered Yisrael, it depends on those who left Mitzrayim. And Navas, they'll inherit what their father had. So therefore, the one child from the one remaining grandchild from his grandfather will receive the same amount of land, the same tract of land as the other family, his cousins that have 10 children. They only have one grandfather left Mitzrayim, and that's all they get, and they have to divide into 10 parts. That's one opinion. It goes according to the people left Mitzrayim. And the other opinion says no. It goes according to the people who entered Yisrael. So if one family had one child, they get one lot. If the cousins had 10 children, they'll get 10 lots. So total, but the Torah says that the people who leave Mitzrayim will get a chelik, the shmois matas aveisim. So this is what happens, which is meshuna, different than any other kind of arrangement. That is, that after we divide, so now between the cousins here, they have 11 properties, each the same size. These 11 properties go back now to their father. So now between the two brothers, the generation that left Mitzrayim, they have now 11 properties. Between the two of them is 11. One of them has one from his son, let's say, or grandson, and the other one is talking his son, and the other one has 10. So a total of 11. And now you re-subdivided. This family will get 5.5, and this family will get 5.5. But one of the families only has one child, so he's getting 5.5 properties. The other family has 10 children, and they're going to get each a little bit more than half of a property. Now, why in the world does that happen, that two brothers have to then redivide the whole thing? The Riva says it's a Gzeres HaKosov. No logic behind it. That's how it was. Rashi in Chumash changes it from our Gemara, and he said it was the grandfather. There was one grandfather. And this one grandfather left in Mitzrayim. So that's why we redivided, because it was the grandchildren who went into Yisrael. From one son, there's only one grandchild. Another son, there were 10 grandchildren. So it's 11 properties. It goes back to the grandfather, and that's why they redivided. This family ends up with 5.5, and this family ends up with 5.5. So it's divided among the Gon Yisrael, and it goes back then to the people left Mitzrayim, and you redivide it accordingly. That's opinion number 2. Opinion number 3 is it goes to both. If you left at Mitzrayim, you get a piece for that, and if you come at Yisrael, you get a piece for that. If you ever get a piece of land for yourself, you have to be 20 years old. If you're not 20 years old, you're under 20 years old, because you don't get counted. Then you'll only get land if you're inheriting from your grandfather, but not on your own right. To be on your own right, you have to be 20 years old. Bearing all that in mind, we'll understand the whole Gemara. So Mishnah. B'nai Slavchad, the daughters of Slavchad, Notul Gimel Chalokim Menachla. They ended up taking 3 portions in Eretz Yisrael. Why 3 portions? Their father was Slavchad, their grandfather was Chayfer, and Chayfer left Mitzrayim into the Midbar, and so did Slavchad. And they both died in the Midbar. Chayfer died in the Midbar, and so did Slavchad. Slavchad, we'll see later, might have been the Mekoshish, the one who gathered the wood together. So they both died in the Midbar. So now, the B'nai Slavchad, after their complaint, we had no brothers, and so we should get the share. What do they get? They'll get 3 portions. Why 3 portions? First of all, they get their father's portion, whatever their father was entitled to, so they get that. Plus, Slavchad was inheriting his father, because his father, Chayfer, who died, had a few sons, but their father is entitled to a share of that land, so they get that portion as well. Plus, their father was a b'choyer, was a firstborn. So they get their father's firstborn. That's another chiddush, that they're entitled to get the b'choyer part of the daughters get even the b'choyer part of their father. And the chiddush is as well that we know we have a general rule that a b'choyer does not take a row to a muhzik. In other words, if somebody owes your father $100 when he passes away, he didn't get it yet, the b'choyer does not get double portion in that. only gets double portion of whatever assets are there, are real, not those that will be realized. But Eretz Yisrael is muchzekis, as we'll see more later. It's as if they already inherited when they left Mitzrayim. It's as if it's already theirs. It's not something that will eventually come to them. It's already theirs. So Tzlavcha, being the B'chayr, inherited from his father, Chefer, a double portion. And the Bnei Tzlavcha received that. So they got a total of 3 different portions in Eretz Yisrael. Different sizes, but different portions. Yeah. First of all, their fathers left Mitzrayim. Plus their grandfather Chefer who died, and his father and their father has an equal share to his brothers. And you got 2 chalakim. Okay, we'll pause 1 minute.